What is SAFe? SAFe is a scaled agile framework popular with large corporations and hated by agile practitioners. Agile practitioners criticize it for many different aspects, like being overly prescriptive, stealing other people's concepts and misusing them, being an undercover waterfall agent, and so on and so forth. To best summarize their opinions, we could say that SAFe is a love child of a control freak and a project manager on a power trip. On the other hand, those who actually use it and are surrounded by the madness of working with multiple component teams in large corporations have a slightly different view. For them, it's more about bringing order to the chaos of multiple teams working on huge projects. It's like saying, hey, let's get organized and make sure that we are not stepping on each other's toes, or at least minimize the number of times the toes get squished. I worked in a few companies that were using SAFe, and I was the release train engineer, the RTE. From that experience, today, I will explain the organized madness of SAFe in a stand-up style with a little help from ChatGPT, Miro, and a pinch of salt. Are you in for the SAFe tutorial? Let's go! Hi, I'm Maria, and this is the Agile State of Mind. Welcome! You've probably seen the image illustrating SAFe framework that just got updated to 6.0. Each of the elements on the picture I hyperlinked, so you can click on them and it will lead you to an extensive explanation of what it means. That's probably how you should get your SAFe tutorial. And that's also probably why you ended up with this video, because whenever you start reading those extensive descriptions, you find yourself thinking about the shopping list. So here we go. Let's explain it once and for all in a concise manner. Before we go there, today's episode is sponsored by Miro, my favorite digital whiteboard that can help you get the collaboration to the next level. And you will see how useful Miro can be if you are working with SAFe and if you are doing the PI planning. Let's check how we can use all those tools together. SAFe, one would say Agile on steroids. I guess we could also call it the big boss of Agile. Although some would say that SAFe has as much to do with Agile as the flat earthers have to do with reason. Now, imagine a bunch of small teams trying to work together. At the beginning, it may look pretty simple, just using Scrum. But at some point, when they start multiplying like rabbits with the corporation's growth, things become messy. And please tell me if you haven't ever lived the growth of a corporation from like 3 to 4 teams to suddenly 10, 14 teams. If you ever lived that, you know what I mean. Scaled Agile Framework, SAFe in short, is like taking those adorable little teams and throwing them into a blender. Yes, a blender. You know, one of those devices that spins things around at high speed and turns everything into a gooey mess. Well, SAFe is like an agile blender on steroids. Picture this. You've got multiple teams working on different components. Yes, in the corporate world, you will still stumble upon component teams as opposed to cross-functional teams. Those teams need each other. They can't deliver anything from end to end. They all need to collaborate, share resources, and align their dependencies to avoid crashing at each other like bumper cars at the fair. That's where SAFe swoops in with its grand plan. It provides a set of rules, guidelines, and best practices, all that overprotection and bureaucracy the agile practitioners hate, that make these teams work together like a synchronized swimming troupe on caffeine. But here's the kicker. SAFe is not only about the teams. It's about big, massive, hulking programs. Welcome to epic programs. It's like scaling up from a bicycle to a supersonic jet. Suddenly, you're dealing with epic proportions. And you need a roadmap that could rival the size of a Tolkien novel. On top of that, SAFe introduces a hierarchy of roles. like a corporate version of the Game of Thrones. You've got safe program manager, release train engineers, safe product managers, safe product owners, safe scrum masters, all vying for power and control. And I'm adding safe to each of the role not to confuse them with scrum masters and product owners as they are described in Scrum. It's like a never-ending battle for the Iron Throne. But instead, it's a battle for sprints, backlogs, and user stories. And I tell you guys, corporations love the roles and love the hierarchies. Do you still not understand why they love it? And just when you thought you mastered the art of safe, they throw in the PI planning event. And that stands for Program Increment Planning. Increment as in sprint, but bigger, like a quarter. So basically a quarterly planning. It's a massive gathering where all the teams come together, armed with sticky notes, markers, and enough coffee to power a small city. It's like a nerd convention mixed with a military operation, or a geeky version of Hunger Games. The teams meticulously plan out the next few months of work with the intensity usually reserved for Olympic athletes. In the present day, though, the planning is usually done in remote, on a fancy digital whiteboard like Miro. I used to create my own version of the PI planning in Miro when I used to work with Safe, but right now, Miro people were kind enough to create a template, so you can use it and save a lot of time for yourself. Especially at the PI planning event, you will get acquainted with Safe's fancy terminology, which, as we already know, has been borrowed from other frameworks, tools, and practices like Scrum, Kanban, XP, even Jira, because we have epics. So you've got your epics, features, user stories flying around like buzzwords on a corporate jargon party. Is the typical to make themselves feel important. And I think in this case it's even to make themselves feel agile because they use the agile terminology. But let's be real, folks. It's just a fancy way of saying, let's break down the huge project into smaller chunks so we don't lose our minds. And that's what PI planning is about. The management and the teams meet each quarter to define what they can accomplish in the next 3 months. And they are planning the work team by team and sprint by sprint. And it looks like this in Miro. I will get into more details about this undertaking that's called PI planning in subsequent videos. Just let me say that the PI planning is a personal favorite of the corporate management, because that's where they're getting their illusion of knowing what will happen in the next 3 months. Now, don't get me wrong, Safe has its perks. It's like having a strict parent that sets boundaries and keeps you in line. We already agreed, it's hugely about the control, right? And you'd ask, what about the self-organization? Well, Safe comes pre-organized for you, like a pre-cooked meal to throw into the microwave. And yes, there are companies out there that actually appreciate that. Because with its structure and guidelines, if done well, Safe helps teams collaborate, communicate, and tackle massive projects without going completely bonkers. Just a little tiny bit. It's like a safe preserver or sanity preserver in the sea of chaos, keeping you afloat when the waves of work threaten to drown you. And I tell you, anyone who, like me, worked on aligning 30 teams, not 13, 30 teams, on common objective, knows what kind of chaos I'm talking about. So buckle up, embrace the chaos, and dive into the wild world of the Safe Agile framework. It's Agile on steroids, a roller coaster of epic proportions, and a blend of organized madness. Just remember to have your sense of humor intact, because in the land of Safe, that's the only thing that will keep you sane. And that's all for today. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye. Thank you.